Hi, everybody. It's Michelle Jackson, and I am here with another amazing interview with an author who has written 35 books. We have Dr. Artika Tyler, who's going to be here with us today to talk about social justice, to talk about writing children's books, as well as equality. We're so happy to have her here. She's fabulous. She's an author, but she is also a civil rights attorney, a sought after speaker, and an educator. And so we are going to have her here just for us to talk to her about her work. So if you're out there and you want to ask questions, you can drop those questions in the comment area and we will definitely get to them. There should be a link. If you can go to StreamYard so that we can see your face. If you go to StreamYard, there is a link there as well for you to sign up for StreamYard so that when you post on Facebook or on YouTube, we can see your face and we can get your questions. But if nothing else, you can always post those comments right where you are. So you can see this on Facebook, on YouTube, and we're going to have it up on Spotify later today. So again, I'm Michelle Jackson. I'm the founder of the Black Writers Workspace, and we are here for a Pen Posse author interview with Dr. Artika Tyner. But before we get started with our interview, we want to get everybody on here. We definitely want you to see our dynamic promo. Again, this is all about meeting our dynamic authors from the Black Writers Workspace. And Dr. Tyner has participated with us from the perspective of being really great with connecting with us on social media. So she's here to educate the writers about writing children's books, but she's also here to talk about her work as a change agent and a civil rights attorney. And I want to make sure we connect the two because what we're learning from her, what we're going to learn later on from her, is that there is a connection between literacy, our prison rate, as well as our quality of life. And so we're going to be talking about that. So be sure to drop your questions. Let's bring her on the screen first. Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here.
Great, great, great. Yeah, we at the Black Writers Workspace started out 15 people in 2020. Now we've got 13,000 who's on our private Facebook group. We also have Twitter, Instagram. We just started a LinkedIn page. We're doing a lot of different things, but it's all about writing and our love for writing. So we're so excited to have you here to talk about your books. I can't even say one book, two books, three books. I've written three. You've written 35. And so you got a lot to share with us, and we're just excited to have you here. So those of you out there, if you have questions, you can drop those questions and we'll definitely get to them. We're going to be talking for about 35 minutes, getting to know Artika, and then just learning about her process of writing, as well as learning more about her social justice, her work in social justice. So if you can, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a daughter of Rondo, meaning I was born here in a historic African American community in St. Paul, Minnesota. And really, when I think about being a daughter of Rondo, that grounds me on why I became a civil rights attorney, why I became an author, because our story was a hidden chapter of history. But it was commonality to many Black communities across the nation. That with 1956, everyone said progress was freeway systems, interstates, and highways. But that meant for us, a freeway went through the heart of our community, displacing us losing our businesses, and losing our promise of wealth creation. And it's not just us. There are now over 1,000 cases of documented racial removal across the nation. And what does that mean? I was born to be a change agent. I was born to tell stories. I was born to capture history. And more importantly, I was born to advocate for change. So that's who I am. Change agent, lawyer, writer, by any means necessary, telling the story of the African American experience through a lens of empowerment, through a lens of courage, and through a lens of rewriting history in a more accurate way.
Wow, just in time for Juneteenth, we were talking about freedom and equality and social justice, and we have someone here who's right there, boots on the ground, making things happen. And so that's so exciting for us. Now, we're going to talk, of course, about your books in a minute, but I wanted to really dig in on this idea of social justice and social change and the things that you've been doing with your life. When I looked you up, one of the things that I saw on your page was that you are committed to creating a world of inclusive leaders. For our viewers out there, tell us what is an inclusive leader and why it's important that they are out here on the ground making things happen and bringing about change for the African American community specifically.
Inclusive leadership for me is a way of life. It's a conscious choice on creating the type of world and community that we want to live in. And when I think about inclusion, I think about it as being that promise of freedom and justice. But I'm also conscious of the fact that that requires action and commitment. Oftentimes, I work with organizations as a speaker and a trainer on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They call me in, of course, for Juneteenth, Black History Month, and to celebrate Heritage Months. All those things are wonderful. But what I really focus on when I go into these organizations, institution of higher education, faith communities, wherever I'm called to go, is about how we all collectively make a commitment. So the leadership piece is about action. What do we see? And sometimes we want to go so broad and abstract that we don't address the issues right in front of us. What's happening in your community? What's happening in the schools? What are the challenges related to healthcare, food insecurity, homelessness? You don't have to look too far to see issues. But the challenge that I've taught my students as someone who's been a lifelong educator is thinking about when we see a problem, then connecting it to the responsibility to create a solution. So when I think about inclusive leadership, I think about combining that action-oriented piece that I talked about. That's a manifestation of leadership. And then inclusion is a value added. And when I think about that value added and the African American community in particular, that we have a unique voice, we have a unique culture, and bringing that to the forefront. And I'll just summarize it in a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou, when she talks about that America has evolved into a rich multicultural tapestry where not one thread is greater than the other. So what she's really talking about is we're weaving together a history, a culture as the United States. It's our greatest asset and our greatest strength. But oftentimes it's the one piece that is forgotten. So through my work around inclusion and leadership and bringing them together, my hope is that we can all lean into our cultural heritage, our history, and help build a better world one step at a time.
You know, I have when I think about social justice and being a civil rights leader, whether you're an attorney or just someone who is, beating the pavement out there for issues that are impactful to our community. When I think about that for myself, I always think it seems big, it seems overwhelming, it seems like something someone like me couldn't do, because when I think about people at that level, I think of people like yourself, but I also think about Martin Luther King and some of these, these leaders that we were, brought up to really understand what the struggle was about. They helped us to understand that. What do you say to someone like me who thinks that what I do would be too small to be impactful for change in my community? How do you inspire someone like me?
I would inspire you with the recognition that, yes, we know names like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Minister Malcolm X, but we also know, in addition to them, there are everyday people that made a commitment around the work. If we look at, just for example, the Montgomery bus boycott, over 1 year, people made a conscious choice that they would not be subject to the level of discrimination and humiliation that was related to just a simple thing of riding the bus. And let's just be honest about it. Oftentimes when I talk to young people, I say Rosa Parks was a civil rights advocate. They'd say, oh, she did that just because her feet were hurting. I was like, what? Who gave you, first of all, the grammatical piece of it? I was like, who owns history? It raises some critical questions. And I was like, no, it was not a grammatical error. It was not a mistake. This was someone who had not only been trained by the NAACP, went to the Highlander School, all these places to take a stand. So it takes ordinary people to have an extraordinary impact, and it takes strategy and vision. And so when I think about that, oftentimes the issues seem too big to solve. That metaphor of the sea is so wide, my boat is so small. But when you really take history and you unpack it, you realize that it was everyday people who made a conscious choice when they saw a problem that they would stand up. So over a year, people, ordinary grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles made a conscious choice to walk for freedom. Rosa Parks may be the voice that we talk about, who helped to be the anchor around history. But even before Rosa Parks, there's a connection to Claudette Colvin. Before her, there's even a connection to Sarah Keys Evans, who decided, she was fully in her military uniform, that she was not going to give her seat up for another white male. That she said, no, I have a right to sit here. My human dignity matters too. So oftentimes history only tells us the glimpse of the story of who appeared as a quote unquote leader. But leadership is a sense of agency that we all share in our day-to-day lives. I remember after a lecture, I met with a mother and she said, look, I don't have time. I'm not a leader. I'm not sure. Your work is wonderful, but we have to lead this to somebody else. I said, how many children do you have? She said, 2 little girls. I said, what did you teach them today? She said, oh, I was talking to them about manners. I was teaching them how to do their science experiment. I was talking to them about school and not to be a bully and how to challenge things they saw in school. I was like, if that's not leadership, I don't know what is. So I think a part of it is reclaiming leadership and redefining it as everyday people creating change in big and small ways, but with one collective vision that we're going to lead the world a better place than how we found it. And it happens in our households. It happens in our communities. It happens in the schoolhouse. It's happening everywhere. But the notion oftentimes is, just by definition, that leadership is about someone else. It's about the exercise of power. But leadership is about everyday people committing to change.
I'm sold. Thank you. I love that. I'm sold. I do believe, I do know that we can all add so much value to this process, even if it's a small amount. I don't think it's really, there is no small amount of addition to that. So thank you so much. Take me back to that very moment, your life experience that led you to become a strong, impactful voice for change in this country.
I'm not sure if it's a particular moment. I just think it was something that was like a birthright. Every time I saw something, even since I was a little girl, I had a tendency to speak up. I oftentimes say, I don't know how my mother did it. I don't think I could raise me. Because I had a question for everything. Still yet today, I'm like, well, mother, how do we solve this? How do we change the world related to this? What can we do? How do we create better educational outcomes? How do we increase access to affordable healthcare? Her head probably hurts after I get done with her. But I was born like this. You know, and oftentimes the joke in my family is like, she was born talking. And I remember the first time ended up in kindergarten somewhere else. They're like, and then, you know, they're doing roll call. They're like, Artika Tyner. I'm like, who is that? Because I thought my name was Hush Child, because that's all my mother said. So fast forward to today, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, because I'm trying to help people understand that your gifts make room for you. If I thought that my ability to question or to ask about issues on an ongoing basis was a problem versus an asset, I would have missed the opportunity that helped prepare me to become a civil rights attorney, helped to prepare me to do policy advocacy work, because I'm willing to ask the big questions until I get to an answer. I will raise a million questions until I can see clarity on how we can change an issue. So I say this to give someone a challenge to lean into your strengths and use them very strategically. I would say really the moment manifested where I knew there was no turning back, when I became an attorney and started seeing some challenges around the criminal justice system and starting to see how comfortable people were with the challenges. You know, I grew up during the peak of the war on drugs. And oftentimes people say, oh, it was high crime, violence, all those things may be true. But what I really saw, even as a child, when I started to ask the question, I was like, what's happening here? Why is it someone can have a job standing on a corner but can't have a job at a corporation? I had different questions. And here we are. I talk about the war on drugs, and what I saw is a missing economy in the Black community. No one wants to talk about that. It's not politically correct. It's not engaging. But here I am seeing young talent, once I became an attorney, in the criminal justice system, where I thought to myself, what if they weren't here? What if they were really the investment bankers? What if they were the realtors? What if they were the people, the teachers, the nurses? And then knowing then that everyone could easily enter into this tangled web of mass incarceration with far too many entry points, far fewer exit points, and plus return back home with a scarlet letter that read F for felon, with all these collateral sanctions and all these pieces. So the criminal justice system and the challenges, not just on the abstract, it hit my own family. I mean, if I think about it, just my mother and grandmother primarily were impacted. Over 70 years collectively of incarceration. That leads us to a different storyline A storyline of, do we sit here with these same challenges, or Hush Child had plenty of questions. What can we do differently? That's what led me to become an entrepreneur, a business owner, because I knew based upon the data, we had to be the answer to our own solutions by building a Black economy and ecosystem to hire folks that are coming back home from prison, to create opportunities so people won't go to prison. So I knew I had a sense of responsibility. So the criminal justice system really changed my life as I came in as an attorney and just saw the reality of what the challenges are in front of us.
We need so many more people just like you inside, telling true stories, talking to us about this pipeline, this challenge that we're facing. I have a 16-year-old, I'm raising a 16-year-old boy. I'm thinking about things differently as a mother who has a son who is going out into the world, who's driving a car now, who has a job now. Will he be treated fairly? Will he, be shot by a police officer? Will his confidence be killed, diminished because of people telling him he's not good enough? These are the things that we're all, and many of us are, especially parents, are thinking and talking about all the time. We need someone on the inside to be fighting like you are to make change. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I tell you, I want to talk a little bit about literacy in mass incarceration, because I know you've done a lot of work in that area. Talk to us about, I know that you've got work that has been developed. You've developed some literacy programs, and you've seen, the impact of illiteracy on those who are in prison and their quality of life. What have you learned that you want to share with us now about that connection between prison, literacy, and equality?
I would say the connection is readily apparent. We have basically created a rule of 4, that 1 in 4 American children cannot read at grade level. If you're not reading at grade level at that 3rd to 4th grade marker, you're 4 times more likely to drop out of school. And if you drop out of school, you're 3.5 times more likely to be arrested in your lifetime. Let's take it a step further. 85% of young people in the juvenile justice system cannot read. 60 to 80% of the adult population. So once again, asking questions is my nature. So when I started to ask questions like, how did we get here? What's the story behind this? And it got personal, because one of my clients learned how to read while in prison. And the reality of it is, what a miscarriage of justice. That meant he couldn't read his indictment. He didn't understand the evidence against him. How is that a fair trial? He couldn't even then advocate for himself, and his life was at stake for a life sentence without parole. So when I think about that, it got personal real fast. And I started to think to myself, how is this possible? How did a K through 12 system allow someone to go through the system and not have some checkpoints related to it? A narrowly tailored intervention to say, how can we help to support your educational outcomes? Better yet, how is it then that a community? Because I know oftentimes people are like, where are the parents? Parents are in all different conditions. Yeah. And what I tell myself is, when I step into a room, I am the parent. I tell children that all the time. They're like, well, I don't know you. I was like, but I'm here and I love you and I'm going to fight for you. So all of a sudden we have a new relationship. Just call me Auntie Dr. Tyner if you want to, but we have a relationship now. I have a responsibility towards you. So I had to say that, because every time I go to the legislature and there's a point of tension, everyone's like, where are the parents? That's why they say it takes a village to raise a child. We're the village and community of parents that surround every child as soon as we walk into the room. So I say all this to say it got personal to me rather quickly, not just from that case, but seeing it over and over again in nearly all of my cases, that someone's learning how to read while in prison. And when I think about that, and it's not just me, it's the U.S. Department of Justice that says the greatest indicator of future incarceration is reading failure. So if we know this, why would we not invest in a solution to help support early literacy, early learning, and engagement to give people the tools, not just to survive, but to thrive? And when I saw no one was moving in that direction, it was like, why wait? Once again, it was clear to me, a gift from God. This is your chance. You've got this voice. I gave you this voice. Use it. Use it loud, use it consistently, say it wherever you go. They had testimony service in church. I was testifying about the criminal justice system and trying to help the agency there. I went to the Girl Scout meetings. I went everywhere that I could go, and still yet today to raise awareness about the issue. with hopefully all of us coming together to be an impetus for change. And that's that community organizer mantra. Got voice, got power. So I knew that I could use my voice, tap into power, and help to create change.
Excellent. You are, wow, you're doing it. And your voice matters. And what I love about what you're saying, and we're going to tie this into your books as well, is the fact that, Hush Child became the girl who's asking all the questions, who, in my opinion, transition those questions into an opportunity to write books that you felt like were important for us to learn about our past, our heritage, and our future, to give us hope and to inspire us. And I think that, when you are thinking about the fact that someone is learning to read in prison, now the question is, what will they read that's going to empower them? And for us as Black writers, we have to put those books out there so that we can give them the message about, the authentic message about being Black in this society, living and loving and having a life that is, rich in culture and honoring that culture. And nobody's going to write that narrative better than us. So that's what's so great, that you have these 35 books. Before we go into your books, though, we've got some questions coming in, and I want to take those. To give everybody an opportunity to ask some questions about just the social justice in your work as a civil rights attorney and your programs. And then we're going to go into your book writing and your publishing. So I have a question here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Are you involved with any group economics? Is that, I don't know if that person is still out there, but when you say group economics, drop us another line. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying, but do you have any answers for that one?
I'm assuming group economics might be related to the Swahili, or what we talk about in Kwanzaa, of Ujamaa.
Ujamaa.
And yes, I believe in cooperative economics. That's why I created my publishing house, to help create a platform for Black authors to be able to get their books published, to be able to build streams of income and be strategic. And actually, I think you might be onto something. You got the inside scoop that's the next book I'm really working on. What can Ujamaa look like in contemporary times? What are the lessons that we can learn from the civil rights movement? Because oftentimes when the civil rights movement is discussed, it begins and ends with access to the ballot box. But there was more than political power, because all the civil rights leaders understood one common theme: political and economic power go together. So yes, I believe in Ujamaa. Yes, I'm pivoting and doing the work daily for that aim, to make sure that we have the resources to invest in our community and have a greater impact.
Excellent. Ujamaa is the name of my investment club that I had in the when I was in my 20s. I believe in that. Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X talked about building up our economy within the Black community, and these are things that we definitely need to do. That is excellent. We have a comment here. I think it's just great. Thank you for the opportunity to learn. I'm looking to release a project. I have years of handwritten journals. I need help with editing and e-book options. We just want you to know that we see that you see your comment, and if we can provide some information, we will. Another one here is, wow. Husband and I are helping a young man who was passed through the education system get off the streets and into rehab. Your work is inspiring. Keep going. Bless you. So thank you for that as well, Denise. Let's move into your writing, because I think that I just want to put this up so people can see all these books, because you know what? I'm loving that you're writing with so much volume. And I feel like from just this conversation that a lot of this writing is probably about getting it out of your head. You know what I'm saying? Because look at that. That's a lot of books, y'all. I don't know. That's a lot of books. And so what I love about these books is that you're talking about history. You have a lot of children's books where you're really dealing with inspiring our young people to appreciate their history, their culture, and to move in a direction that's going to make them more socially conscious. And socially, and be those change agents, be a change agent simpler to you. You have one book that I love. It's called Justice Makes a Difference. You want to hold that up for everybody?
I will.
The illustrations are beautiful. A young African-American girl who is wanting to be a change agent, wanting to see things go in a different direction. She's talking to her grandmother, and the grandmother is talking to her about all these inspiring people, Ella Baker and Shirley Chisholm and, Paul Robeson and Ida B. Wells. And when I think of you, I think about Ida B. Wells. Talk to us a little bit about Justice. Is this character you? And if it is she still what's driving you to move forward? That little hush girl, is she still what's moving you ahead?
Yes, you got it. This is my Citizen of the Week photo. So this is first grader, it's Artika. And yes, learning about the heroes and sheroes and Black history, shaping it day by day, was some of the lessons that I learned from my late grandmother. So literally, when you go through the illustrations of the grandma are of the likeness of my grandma Nellie. So literally, the illustrator, Jeremy Norton, took our likeness and built a book around it and some of the lessons that I had in my day-to-day life. So that's Grandma Nellie and myself. And Jeremy Norton even did some detail because it has our family photo on top. So yes, this is the story of me coming of age and trying to figure out, if oftentimes we're told that the issues are too big to solve, what can you do? And really, this book, I hope it's a message for all ages, that you're never too young to make a difference. You're never too old to make a difference. No matter your age, start where you are. And that was a lesson that I learned from my grandmother. She didn't have any formal leadership title per se, but she was the one that got everything done in our community. If the church needed something, she was there. She figured it out. If she saw someone in need, she didn't care if you were homeless, if you're coming out of prison. It didn't matter, sick, shut in. She was there, and she didn't ask you how you could pay her back. She didn't ask you what you do next. She was willing to give. She was willing to build, and she was willing to help establish a stronger sense of family value and community values wherever she was. And I call that, and I described it in the book, that was her decision of living out her faith in her day-to-day life. And that was the example. That's the legacy that I come from.
And I ask you about little girl Artika because little girl Michelle is what drives me. She is the voice in my head. She is, the 10-year-old walking through the projects in Fairfield, Alabama, who wanted to do everything. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a best-selling author. I grew up across the street from an HBCU. So I got to see that firsthand. I got to see, Black people excel. But I was from a community where everybody was working. They were great. I mean, the community raised me completely, but everybody had their head down and they were working. They didn't have time to think about, how do we nurture this young person who wanted to write books. I had to go out, get into the corporate world, get my degrees, do all those things before I got the confidence to write my books, because I really didn't have that kind of mentorship around me. But it's little girl Michelle that is constantly tapping me or pulling at my dress hem and saying, "Don't stop." Are you still that person? Is that still the thing in you that's like driving you? And is that a good or bad thing to still be driven by those passions from so long ago?
Oh, yes. Little girl Artika speaks all the time. She's the one that saved her little allowance and coins she got from her grandma to go buy books at the Goodwill and the Salvation Army. She was the one that came from humble means, but had a desire to see the world. I was in a Chinese immersion program, and I oftentimes tell young people, also learn another language. I didn't understand it back then. It was just, I'll admit, I could play mahjong. We had good food. My Lao sure had good art and experience to do. It was just, to me, it was like a social activity in a social club. Fast forward to today, I've lived throughout China and Africa, have had these cross-cultural experiences. So I saw growing up, my world was a 1-mile radius. But I knew through the power of books that the world was mine and the world was my inheritance. I just had to go out and go forward and be able to say, these are the experiences that I want to have. This is the life that I want to live. So when I thought about that, the life that I created is not a life that I've ever seen up close and personal. And oftentimes people say you cannot be what you cannot see. I would take it a step further. Sometimes you have to create what you haven't seen. So for me, yes, that little voice is always like, travel the world. So I've traveled the world. That little voice is always like, try something new, because clearly you tried something new to get this far. And most importantly, I think that little voice always says, never give up, because I knew plenty of people wrote me off. they wrote me off even in a simple journey. So I just saw someone who wrote me off to my face last week, but I ignored it completely. Like comments, and I'm just saying this to encourage whoever's listening. Don't listen to what the words are that are coming out of people's mouth. Listen to your destiny. And for me, it's my God-given destiny. But listen to your destiny, which is inside, that no one else can hear the beat of that drum but you. So I remember this particular individual told me, and it's very fascinating. I'll tell you the backdrop of the story, but let me tell you what was told first. I'm not sure if you'll do well in law school because, you know, Black people tend not to test well for the LSAT. I was like, okay. And then the next step was, even if you do well and matriculate into a program, you know, we're not certain because, you know, Black people can't pass the bar. I'm thinking to myself, what can we do when you get done with this conversation? And more importantly, I was like, the person never asked anything about me. They didn't ask if I was Phi Beta Kappa. They didn't ask that I was in the top 10% of my class. They didn't ask that I finished school in 3 years. They didn't ask anything about me. So I give this just as a little encouragement of someone that's out there that's getting a lot of the naysayers. The most important tool that I've learned in life is shut out the noise. There's a lot of noise that will surround you. You can come from your family, your friends. It's right in your own household most of the time. And the community. It's like it can come every direction. But when I think about when I saw that person, they were like, "Oh, good job," because I was on the stage and did my speech. Oh, you were exact. I was like, people must like forget what they say because then the person's like, "You are exactly what I expect you to be doing so well." I was like, "But you were the one who told me 25 years ago, basically, that I wouldn't achieve a thing. So which one is it?" So when I think about all these experiences, I just live my life in a way where I had the power to tell myself, "Go, girl." I had the power to tell myself sky's the limit. And I had the power to tell myself what the first female head of state in Africa said, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, president of Liberia. She gave this notion that if your dreams aren't big enough to scare you, they're not big enough. So I just happen to be that dreamer with a shovel that's just building it out every day, just build a little bit. And so this journey has just allowed me to do that through books.
Absolutely. We love that. Tell us a little bit about your books and tell us about planting people growing, was it Planting People Growing Justice Press and your publishing. And then we're getting a lot of questions that are about people wanting to tap into your knowledge about publishing. And so we're going to put some of those up as well once you talk to us about your press and what you're doing with your books and how you're helping writers. And then we'll end it there. So anybody else, if you have any more questions, go in and drop those questions. But we're going to definitely get to some of your questions in a minute. But tell us about your press, what you're doing, and kind of your next steps as well.
Well, I would say our press was created out of necessity. If you asked me in 2017, would I create my own press? I would have said absolutely not. But I realized once I started asking questions and engaging, I knew that there was something missing. I knew there was something missing when you have, you know, more books about Black dogs and Black bears than about Black girls and Black boys in the children's book industry. So that lack of representation, less than 10% of books written about us as people of color, and less than 10% reflecting our representation as a main character of color or protagonist in the book. So once again, it's like, so what do we do about that? So I started going out to other publishers, thinking I could align with them, getting my books published there, and got no and no. The first no was, well, the challenge is that we're not sure the African Americans read. It's like, wouldn't want to work with you anyway, because that clearly doesn't make sense. And then the next one is, I'm not sure if you have the, you know, and anytime you hear your people, you already know the conversation's over, have the resources to buy books, conversation's done. And then out of necessity, I had worked in publishing in different areas as well, primarily more in the academic or professional association type of books for leadership. So I had some experience already working in publishing. So I was like, just, you know, I'm not going to keep pushing against a door that's not open my own door. So in 2017, we started with Justice Makes a Difference as our first publication and just continue to grow. And I also want to say that you can come from humble beginnings and continue to grow your venture, whether it's as an independent writer, self-publishing. We grow it day by day, moment by moment. So for me, it was this idea of how could I then create not only an access and opportunity for myself, but for others. And so Planting People Grow Injustice Press, for me, came out of necessity. We went from that one title per year, and now we're aiming and we'll be prepared for by 2025 to publish at least 12 titles per year, a mix of biographies, a mix of chapbooks and anthologies, and also, of course, children's books are our anchor.
So walk us through what you do. How would you work with a new author? Talk to us about that.
We'd work with a new author in several ways. First of all, through our writing competitions. So our writing competitions are available where we are seeking out new talent based upon themes. Like, for instance, we have writing competitions that are open right now for young people that are looking at how to STEM change the world. We have another writing competition that's looking at what is financial literacy? How can money create change? What would it look like? How do we reclaim Ujamaa again? Mm-hmm. So we have writing competitions, and then we always have an open call for submissions. So that way we can get in the submission. Someone has something on their heart, a book or something they've been working on, they can share it with us. So we're flexible in our approach because we wanted multiple avenues to help bring the books together and to help expand our collection.
You know, I'm happy to hear you talk about the challenges that writers, especially Black writers, face when we're trying to get published, whether it's a publishing deal or just working with small or large press. I work with a lot of writers, and it's so interesting to me sometimes that when you run into these best-selling authors, their stories are like, hey, I had a great story, an agent or a publisher picked it up, and it took off. But they're outliers, meaning most of us don't have that experience. And so I'm happy to know that you have had a level of success and you are willing to share it and not say, you know, hey, it was a simple thing. I just did it. No, you're saying I went to people, I was established, and they still would not give me that opportunity, which is a lot what a lot of us are facing. So I'm glad to know that you are creating an opportunity for us, for writers in general, but definitely for Black writers. So thank you so much for that. This question here, do you help authors file their publishing with the Library of Congress? I'm just going to put them up so you can see them and you can respond. Mm-hmm.
So I would say definitely so. I think that is an important step just to make sure it's available in the national database. So yes.
Let's see this one here. I paid $2,200 to get my first book published, and on Amazon, is there an alternative for mainstream attention? I have a children's book already prepared.
Mm-hmm. I would say I would answer this question by stepping back and stepping into it. So stepping back would be the question that I always have for people when you're preparing a book. I have a 90-10 rule. I know writing a book is a labor of love, but the book writing journey is the 10%. The 90% is marketing and development. Literally, yours truly does that every day. Notice what I said, not sometimes, every day. So it's a data-driven practice in figuring out who is your audience, how do you find them, how do you engage with them, and bring and add value. Because oftentimes we produce a book and then we're like, what's next? Even something, let's just say Amazon. I'll just use that as a quick case study. To have my book on Amazon is just a starting point. I need to understand Amazon ads. I need to make sure that I'm promoting and getting reviews on Amazon. I need to make sure that Amazon ads and all these things are interfacing with my social media. Maybe it's a newsletter that I produce to then provide information that supports the book and the ideas that I'm working on as well. So I would say a very holistic approach. So an alternative of mainstream attention, I don't have any. Literally, I engage related to my books. I literally have it on my bulletin board in front of me. I make 3 contacts a day. So make sure that I'm building a relationship, whether it's with a bookstore, a school, a librarian. That's how I even found this platform. I'm using social media as a vehicle. That's my shortcut. I follow the hashtags and find the people that are engaged related to the work. So unfortunately, I don't know any shortcuts beyond the work that goes into it. And it's the same is true whether I'm a New York Times bestseller. That's one day in history that I had the data up there. I have to continue to build the platform every day.
Now, I want everybody out there to know something. First, Artika and I are going to be doing some partnering, hopefully in the near future. I do marketing. I'm going to be doing some marketing classes, but I will say this: she just wrapped that up for you so tightly, and I want you guys to know the importance of building that content daily, making those the contacts daily. It takes work to push a book. It doesn't matter if you're bestseller or not. It takes work. You can't write a book and go hide. You got to write the book. You got to take off the creative hat, put on the entrepreneur hat, come up with a marketing strategy, a sales strategy, work your social media. What I love about you is every day I wake up to you either going live or pictures of you in your books. You are very, very engaging on social media. And so that is what our writers have to understand, is that you're not going to write the book and then all of a sudden you're going to just sell them just because. You're competing with millions of books out there. So you definitely want to stand out. This question here, do you offer legal advice to authors?
On a limited basis. Primarily, I refer out some of the IP work or the copyright and some of the other considerations. I know it, don't get me wrong, but it's just a capacity issue. So it's just like, how can I run the law firm, run all these pieces? So I'm happy to refer out to some of the resources, but I'll tell you a few resources that are available to you. You can look at, for every state, there is an Arts and Humanities Board. There's also the National Endowment of Humanities, National Endowment of the Arts. They also have the Authors Guild, for instance. All of those places, you have access to legal resources at the tip of your fingers that you can engage with. And in most instances, they are free.
Excellent. We've got one more, and we're going to wrap up. Let's see. Is a licensed relationship therapist. I'm curious about your thoughts on self-publishing and publishing with the publishing house, especially as a Black woman. What's been your experience? What have you learned about the journey as a publisher? She's already talked a little bit about that, but if you want to touch on some things, that would be great.
Yes, I will say I'm a both and. So I've done kind of a hybrid model. About half of my books are published through our own publishing house. I've also been commissioned to write books and write for hire contracts and other engagements as well. I'm also now working with an agent to help give some of the books to some of the larger publishing houses. What am I saying by this example? It's a multifaceted approach. So you have to think strategically on where you can thrive within the industry. And just like a highway, there's multiple entry points. So there could be the self-published. That's where I started and created our publishing house simultaneously. It can be the traditional kind of contracting, writing for hire. It could also be that you're working with an agent and you're getting into a traditional publishing house. All of these pieces come together. So I'll just make it real personal and up close for you. So that means I have a mix of royalties coming in here and there. That means I have money coming in for direct sales. All those pieces come together to help formulate Artika Tyner as the author.
Excellent. Artika, we're so excited that you're with us. We're so excited that you were willing to even answer questions about the publishing. We know that you're doing some amazing things there. You're a great example of what happens when you write a book. A lot of doors can open for you. Now the question becomes, are you going to walk through those doors and make something of that opportunity? And you, of course, have. And we are so inspired and hope that all of our writers will do just what you're doing. Give us a final word of inspiration for our writers out there, as well as our readers who are looking for work by African Americans that really speak to the culture or the things that we feel are propelling us forward as a community.
Well, for our writers, I would say stay connected. If you're here today, you're in the right place. You're in the right space to get the information and content. Keep going to the social media pages that are available for the Black Writers Workspace. I go there every day. So clearly there's good information, good resources. So stay connected. I would also say it's important. When I started my journey, I joined a writing circle of Black women. That way we were supporting each other on a monthly basis, reading each other's manuscripts, offering advice, saying you should speak here, you should meet this person. Because oftentimes it's tempting as a writer because the process is so individual and personal to us. So we're protecting our writing. We don't have a chance to work with others. So I don't know what it looks like for you. Maybe it's just one other person. Make a commitment, go to the coffee shop once a month, exchange manuscripts and read and help each other grow. Iron sharpens iron, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say those pieces are important. But I would say also just think about, and this goes to why I wrote the particular type of books that I decided to write. There's something that will be quite obvious once you look at my book list. I tend to write nonfiction. Why? Go back to that little girl. I love to read nonfiction. So find out where your passion areas are and align. Yes, I do write fiction. Do not get me wrong. But 95% of what I've written has been nonfiction, those leadership biographies talking about those heroes and sheroes that inspire me. So when I think about that, and my most recent book that's a biography is about Annie Turnbow Malone, who helped to mentor and teach Madam C.J. Walker. When by the time I got done doing research about Annie Turnbow Malone, I was like, get up and repurpose your whole marketing plan, your whole business plan, because clearly this woman did the impossible to become one of the wealthiest women in the nation, one of the first self-made African-American female millionaires. And if you take Black or African-American, all female millionaires. And how did she do that? She understood her product, she understood distribution, and she went global. She understood Pan-Africanism. So when I think about that, I get inspired too by the books that I'm writing and get new methods to enhance my work. So I want you to be able to say then, as an author, as a reader, what are the things that you're passionate about? And then align your resources and time and talent in that direction. Your gifts will make room for you. But oftentimes I see everyone trying to, when someone's like mentor or coach me, they want to be a replica of me. There's enough of me. I want you to be a replica of you. My mother always says that be the best original, be yourself. Figure out where you add value. And I want you to lean into it. Don't give it 1%, give it 100%. And build a brand, build the media kit, build the resources around it to be strategic, to be able to have an impact. Because by the time we all get done, what are we going to do? Oh my goodness. We won't even revolutionize publishing by itself. We'll be able to change the world because all of our books will come together, rooted in culture, rooted in history, and be able to align with one harmony of justice and freedom.
Excellent. Tell everybody how they can connect with you.
Yes, you can connect on our website. So it's PPGJ Books, PPGJ Books. That's also our handle on social media. You can connect with me directly. My name, of course, Artika Tyner, artikatyner.com. And I'm going to give you an invitation. Even when you look at my website, my personal website, do you have your personal website ready? I was surprised by how many people didn't have a professional headshot, no website. I'm like, how can someone find you? So that's why at our events, we started getting a professional headshot. Mm-hmm. So even if your first web page is your professional headshot and your bio and the cover of your book, you started. Because where you started is not where you finished. That's exactly how I started my webpage. That's all it had. That's all I knew how to design. That's all I could do. And then as I got more resource, of course, additional people helped me, brought their expertise. That's fine. But I want you to be able to have your first imprint or marker, which is your website and bio, and continue to build from there.
Excellent. Excellent. Give me your website one more time. You said it's Artika.
Yes, artikatyner.com. Okay. That's my personal website.
I'm putting it in the chat box, everybody, so you can see it. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We have some just amazing comments come in, people who are excited to just get a chance to meet you. Some of the key things I want people to take away is follow the Planning People Growing Justice Press and be a part of that. If you have a book that meets what they're looking for in order to help you get that book published, go for it and continue to connect with her. We do ask that you do that. We also ask that you go to her website and purchase her work. Okay. We're not just doing these. We want you to support our writers. So be sure to purchase her work as well. Also, be sure to join us on the Black Writers Workspace. If you're not already on the private group, we have 13,000 writers and readers. It is on Facebook. Please join us and join us on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. And finally, we also ask that you add your book to our bookstore, which is called directtoauthor.com. I started author.com, and it is in the chat box a year ago. And the goal is to pull out our independent authors and give us space in order to promote our work. So we have about 250 books in the database, and you can upload your book profile, your YouTube pages, channels, as well as a book synopsis, and we promote you. And if you have a service, we will also promote your service as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Let's see the link, please. Okay, I'm just looking in some of the make sure we have everything. If you can you see the comment area? I want to make sure you got your information out there and I'm not putting it in incorrectly. Can you see that, Artika?
Let me look here for you. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. For the books, PPGJ books for Planting People Growing Justice.com. And then it's correct. The other piece is artikatyner.com. So you can see my website.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this. This has been just awesome. We're going to have it on YouTube, on Facebook, so you can continue to watch it, continue to share it. Until next time, I will see you shortly. Don't leave us. Artika, I'm going to take you off the screen, but I want you to stay with me so we can give you a formal farewell. So again, everybody, have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you for our next Pen Posse, which will be on the 17th of June. We're going to be talking about Juneteenth and writing works that are very much so focused on social justice and equality. Thank you.
Thank you.